You ever find yourself lighting a fire pit with a blowtorch in the middle of a blackout, only to be screamed at by a woman in pearls about open flame protocols? Yeah. That was my Tuesday. Let me back up. 3 months ago, I moved into a quiet cul-de-sac in Maple Hollow Estates. I inherited the place from my Uncle Dave, classic old-school prepper who built the house just outside the HOA's official boundary. Paid off. Solar ready. And most importantly, outside the jurisdiction of the neighborhood tyrant known as Karen Billingsworth. Now, Karen. Where do I begin? Picture a woman who owns 6 cardigans for every day of the week and files complaints about unapproved birdhouses. She's been the self-appointed ruler of Maple Hollow's HOA for 8 years straight. Calls herself a community steward. The rest of us call her Clipboard Caligula. The day I moved in, she showed up with a color-coded folder labeled welcome packet and a violation notice for unsightly gravel. She said it like I'd smeared the front yard with pig's blood. I chuckled, assuming she was joking. She wasn't. When I told her, politely, that my house wasn't under the HOA's control, her expression dropped like I'd just insulted her golden retriever. All properties on this block fall under the HOA charter, she chirped, waving a suspiciously outdated map printed on yellowing paper. I pointed at my deed. No HOA clause. No agreement. No jurisdiction. She left without another word. But not before eyeing my firewood stack like it personally offended her. That should have been the end of it. But of course. This is Karen we're talking about. Over the next few weeks, I started receiving anonymous notes. Please consider repainting your shutters to match community aesthetics. Gravel driveways are potential fire hazards, do better. One even suggested, reconsidering your non-HOA status may benefit all parties involved. It was all unsigned. But let's be real, Karen's perfume practically wafted off the paper. Here's what Karen didn't know, and probably still doesn't understand: I'm not just some guy with a power drill and a stubborn streak. I work in power infrastructure compliance. As in, I approve permits, greenlight transformer installations, and audit residential grid tie-ins across 3 counties. Karen's HOA? Her entire precious empire? It falls within my review zone. And I didn't tell her. Not because I was hiding it, but because I genuinely wanted to be left alone. Big mistake. When news of a winter storm began hitting local forecasts, the whole neighborhood started panicking. HOA newsletters started flying into inboxes like eviction notices from zoos. All gas generators must be concealed. Wood-burning fires are not permitted. Do not use propane tanks unless approved. I ignored them. I had every right to. My home is not in the HOA. My emergency systems, solar battery banks, propane generators, radiant floor heat, all code compliant. All legal. When the storm hit, the neighborhood went dark around 7:03 p.m. The temperature dropped to 19 degrees Fahrenheit. I was bundled up in 2 jackets, outside with a blowtorch, reigniting the fire pit Uncle Dave had built himself. And that's when Karen came marching through the snow like she was invading Narnia. Open flames are prohibited under HOA blackout protocol. She barked. I didn't respond. I just adjusted the flame and kept working. Then came the smirk. Maybe you should have paid your HOA fees like the rest of us. That line. That smug little jab. It would have been annoying on any day. But during a blackout, while she stood in the cold and my house glowed with backup power, that hit different. She didn't know. She had no idea who I was. But she was about to find out. The power went out around midnight. Not just for the rest of the neighborhood, for me. At first, I thought it was a glitch. My backup systems should have kicked in automatically. I had triple redundancy, solar storage, a propane generator, and even a thermal battery array my uncle installed before the phrase off-grid became trendy. But everything was dark. No heater hum. No emergency lights. Not even the inverter's soft blue pulse. I stepped outside, flashlight in hand, breath clouding in the frozen air. Snow was still coming down in lazy, thick clumps. the kind of snow that blankets mistakes. I followed the cable run out to the edge of my lot, right where the main line met the HOA installed transformer pad. That's when I saw it. The line had been cut, not disconnected. Not damaged by weather. Cut. Clean. Deliberate. Whoever did it used bolt cutters. The rubber housing was split in a perfect V, with exposed copper glinting beneath a dusting of snow. I didn't curse. I didn't yell. I just stared for a moment and whispered, "You've got to be kidding me." And then I smiled. See. When I bought the house, I installed a wildlife camera near the transformer box. It wasn't even about security, more to keep an eye on the raccoons that Uncle Dave used to feed. I'd forgotten all about it. Until now. I stomped back inside, powered up my laptop using a backup battery pack, and pulled the footage. There he was, the HOA board member I recognized from the welcome packet incident. Headlamp on. Bolt cutters in hand. Looking straight into the lens like it was a selfie. Then he smiled. They actually thought they could get away with this. I called the sheriff's department. They said it was a civil matter. I called the HOA, got voicemail. I called my lawyer. He said, "Don't panic. Keep every record. They just turned this into a case file." I didn't panic. I didn't even call the board member back. What I did do was boot up the state permit registry system and start drafting a compliance inspection order. One that, when submitted, would trigger a mandatory review of the HOA's entire electrical infrastructure. See. Karen and her little empire didn't realize one very important fact. They had just sabotaged the man who signs off on their permits. Their clubhouse, their streetlights, their pool heating system, all powered by infrastructure that needed to be annually reviewed and greenlit by someone with my job title. And now I had serious concerns about their compliance status. The next morning, I brewed coffee on a propane burner and walked outside to assess the damage. That's when I heard the crunch of snow and looked up to see Karen standing there, robe, boots, and a steaming mug like this was just another day in HOA paradise. She took a long sip, eyes twinkling with smugness. "Maybe this will teach you how we do things around here," she said. And just like that, everything clicked. She'd ordered it. She may not have cut the wire herself, but this had her fingerprints all over it. I didn't say a word. I just smiled back. Because while she thought I was the outsider, the troublemaker, the guy refusing to fall in line, she didn't realize she just unplugged the one person who could audit every inch of her kingdom. By the time the bright orange utility truck rolled down the street later that afternoon, carrying an unmarked inspection crew and a clipboard with my name on the top, Karen was still floating on her little cloud of control. She didn't know the inspection was already authorized. She didn't know the state had been notified. And she definitely didn't know that her HOA's permit renewal request, scheduled for next quarter, was now being flagged for conditional review with multiple red annotations citing possible tampering with infrastructure and unlawful interference with private property utilities. That's the thing about power. The real kind doesn't need to shout. It just flips a switch and watches everything go dark. The inspection crew arrived on a Wednesday morning. No warning. No newsletter. No polite HOA announcement. Just a rumble of heavy-duty tires on pavement and a bright orange utility truck pulling up in front of the Maple Hollow Estates Community Clubhouse. On the windshield, a laminated state compliance notice. Stamped, signed, and dated by yours truly. I watched from my front porch, coffee in hand, as the crew stepped out. They weren't the clipboard-wielding junior interns Karen might have expected. These were seasoned inspectors, boots muddy from walking actual substation trenches, hard hats dented by real-world work, not HOA politics. Leading them was Chief Inspector Ramirez, a man I'd known for years. He gave me a subtle nod as he passed, then motioned for his team to begin. Karen didn't even realize they were there until the fourth man started taking photos of the electrical housing behind the community pool. The moment she saw the state logo on their jackets, she power-walked across the clubhouse parking lot like her pearls were armor. "Excuse me," she snapped. voice 3 octaves higher than usual. You can't just barge onto HOA property unannounced. Ramirez turned to her slowly. We're not barging, ma'am. We're inspecting. Per state authority. Section 9.3 of the Community Infrastructure Oversight Act. Karen blinked. Well, you didn't get our permission. You don't have the authority to deny a state audit, Ramirez said flatly. That shut her up. I wasn't part of the inspection officially, conflict of interest and all that, but I knew where the skeletons were buried. And I had made sure Ramirez's team had a very thorough checklist. It didn't take long. They started with the pool's electrical panel. Wires were exposed. Insulation deteriorated. Circuit breakers rusted and barely holding together with plastic zip ties. One of the inspectors actually winced. This looks like someone tried to rewire a toaster using dental floss, he muttered. They moved to the HVAC system powering the community gym, Karen's pet project. The generator? Placed inside a shed with no ventilation. Carbon monoxide readings spiked on the handheld meter. It was a miracle no one had passed out during a hot yoga class. Meanwhile, a side gate had been padlocked shut in violation of fire code. And a transformer box out back had a giant sticker on it, approved installation, property of Maple Hollow HOA. Trouble is, the permit ID never existed in the city's system. I checked myself. Karen's posture changed by the minute. At first, she tried to play charming, offering the crew coffee, pastries, even fake smiling through clenched teeth. When that didn't work, she went defensive, demanding to know which resident had triggered this. Ramirez didn't answer, but I saw him glance, for just a moment, toward my porch. She followed his eyes, and that's when she knew. That night, the HOA group chat turned into a digital war zone. Residents were asking questions. Why were inspectors there? Was something wrong with the clubhouse? Why had the pool closed early with caution tape around the breaker panel? Someone leaked a photo, blurry but damning, of the exposed wires along the back fence. Then someone else posted a screenshot of the inspection vehicle's state permit notice, with my name in the corner. Karen tried damage control the only way she knew how, an all-caps email blast. Do not interact with inspection team. This is a routine compliance visit. HOA board is handling everything professionally. But it was too late. Speculation had already snowballed into accusation. Residents weren't just annoyed, they were furious. And worse, they were starting to connect dots. That strange burning smell near the gym. That weird humming noise from the transformer. The half-finished security upgrade they'd paid dues for but never actually saw. Karen's empire wasn't built on good leadership. It was built on silence, intimidation, and red font newsletters that scared people into obedience. But now those people had questions. And no amount of HOA bluster could stop what was coming next. Once the inspection report came in, the fallout was immediate. The state revoked Maple Hollow's operating permit pending full compliance repairs, which effectively stripped the HOA of its legal authority. No more fines. No more letters. No more HOA-sponsored newsletters telling people what color to paint their mailboxes. Karen was still technically president, but she no longer held the whip. And without the threat of penalties, something wild happened. People stopped being afraid. It started small. A neighbor named Greg, middle-aged, lived across the cul-de-sac, walked over one afternoon with a dusty file folder under his arm. I've been documenting Karen's fines for 4 years, he said. Thought it might be useful now. Inside were dozens of violation letters, for excessively reflective wind chimes, unauthorized mulch coloration, and my personal favorite, suspicious gnome placement. Every fine was hand-signed. None of them had supporting code citations. And according to Greg, many homeowners had simply paid the fees out of fear she'd escalated to a lien. He wasn't the only one. A woman named Dana showed up 2 days later with a copy of an old email from Karen, threatening foreclosure over a privacy fence Dana had installed, with written HOA approval. That approval mysteriously disappeared when she tried to challenge the threat. The dam was breaking. More stories came out, about backdated citations, missing payment receipts, and even a bizarre noise violation someone received for practicing cello. At 3 p.m. on a Saturday. People weren't just angry, they were furious. And when a neighborhood like Maple Hollow loses faith, it doesn't march. It organizes. A few residents petitioned for an emergency board restructuring. With the HOA temporarily stripped of its authority, Karen had no way to block it. By week's end, a provisional committee was in place. And that's when the real smoking gun turned up. His name was Rye. Rye was a soft-spoken guy in his early 30s who'd somehow ended up on the interim board. He didn't talk much. Avoided eye contact. The kind of guy Karen probably ignored completely. Which is probably why he found the box. He knocked on my door one night, carrying a cardboard banker's box covered in dust and pink insulation fibers. "I found this behind a false wall in the HOA office," he said. Inside were folders, dozens of them. Handwritten ledgers, check stubs, contractor invoices that didn't match any official records. One binder had the label discretionary outreach on it. Inside was a list of community projects that had supposedly been funded with HOA dues. Except none of them had ever happened. There were phantom charges for landscaping upgrades, payments to non-existent vendors, and a very real receipt for a security camera installation that led to a storage unit registered under Karen's married name in a town 40 miles away. Another folder was worse: consulting services, personal. It showed direct transfers, tens of thousands of dollars, paid to a shell company set up last year. The signer? Karen. The beneficiary? Karen. The reason? Advisory services. There were even scanned documents showing she had issued double dues to elderly residents who didn't check their billing statements. Rye looked pale. "What do we do with this?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just stared at the names, the numbers, the deliberate signatures. Then I picked up the phone, not to call the city, not the HOA, not Ramirez or the permit office. I called the State Fraud Division. We met at a diner 2 towns over. Neutral ground. The investigator wore a dark jacket, no name tag, and a poker face carved from stone. I handed over the box, the flash drive with digital scans, and the timeline I'd assembled since the blackout. Every HOA newsletter, every violation letter, even screenshots from the group chat. He said only one thing: "You've done half our job for us." That was the moment I knew. Karen hadn't just been a tyrant with a clipboard. She was a thief. And soon, the entire neighborhood would know it too. It didn't happen with sirens. No handcuffs in front of lawn chairs or cameras. Just a plain gray sedan that rolled up to Karen's house one mild Friday morning. 2 state investigators stepped out, plain clothes, clipboards in hand, polite but firm. One knocked. The other waited with a small leather bag, probably containing a warrant and a pair of federal-grade zip ties. Karen answered the door in a silk robe, holding a coffee cup that said "Boss Lady." She didn't scream, didn't faint, didn't even argue. She just nodded, stepped outside, and let them escort her to the back seat like she was heading to a dentist appointment. From my front window, I watched the whole thing unfold, mug of fresh coffee in hand, solar panels humming softly on the roof behind me. I wasn't gloating. Not really. Okay, maybe a little. But the real payoff came the following week. The interim board, energized by Rye and a growing team of formerly silent residents, issued a vote, a final one. The motion? To dissolve the Maple Hollow Estates HOA entirely. You'd think something like that would divide a neighborhood. It didn't. It united us. Turns out most folks had been waiting for someone to challenge the system. They just didn't want to be the first. The vote passed with 89% approval, nearly unheard of. Karen's name was never mentioned during the meeting. But it didn't need to be. Her fingerprints were on every crooked policy, every vanishing fee, every whispered threat of lien or lawsuit. The HOA was officially disbanded, its authority stripped, its office shuttered. The newsletter? Cancelled. The official mailbox? Removed. And the HOA printer, an overworked beast that had terrorized our mailboxes for a decade, was ceremonially tossed in a dumpster behind the old clubhouse. A few days later, Rai stopped by. "They want you to join the new committee," he said. I laughed. "You're kidding. Right?" "No. Seriously. They think you'd be good." "You kept calm. You saw it through." "That's exactly why I'm not doing it," I said, sipping coffee on the porch. He chuckled and nodded. "We'll save you a seat at the next barbecue anyway." That's what life became in Maple Hollow. People actually talked to each other now. They asked for advice about solar panels, compared strategies on insulation. A couple of them even helped Dana repaint her fence, the one Karen once threatened to fine her over, without the HOA breathing down their necks. People rediscovered something rare in suburbia: community. And me? I kept doing what I'd always done. Inspected power lines. Approved permits. Wrote up safety checks. Except now. When I came home, I didn't expect passive-aggressive sticky notes on my windshield or newsletters folded like legal threats. Instead, I got banana bread, lawn invites, the occasional beer dropped off on a porch step with a thank you card. Then, one spring morning, I heard the low rumble of a moving truck. It pulled up across the street. Karen's house. Her daughter, surprisingly normal, honestly, was helping load boxes into the back. No eye contact. No drama. Just quiet efficiency. Karen didn't come out until the very end. She wore dark sunglasses. Her signature pearls swapped out for a hoodie. No clipboard. No phone. Just a small travel bag and a look I couldn't quite read, somewhere between resentment and surrender. She didn't look my way. But as the truck pulled out, turning onto the main road and disappearing down the hill, I felt something shift. Not glee. Not vengeance. Relief. That night, as the sun set behind the trees, I lit my fire pit again. No blowtorch. No blackout. No Karen yelling from the sidewalk. Just quiet. Just flame. And for the first time since I'd moved in, it really felt like home. Victory, I'd come to realize, doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes, it's in outlasting the chaos, in staying patient while the house of cards collapses under its own weight. Karen thought power was about control, about rules and punishments and printed threats. But real power, it's knowing you could crush someone, and choosing instead to let the truth do it for you. And that's how the Queen of Maple Hollow lost her crown, not with a roar, but with the quiet click of a power permit she never should have tampered with.